That's the vast majority of the kids that were with us, even for 13, 15 months, ended up back with their family of origin. And that's a good thing. It doesn't always feel good in the moment because you know, your heart is vulnerable and open if you're doing this right, and so you really fall in love with these kids. Well, hi, I'm Matthew, the father of four kids, three biological and one we're getting ready to adopt. So my faith is integral to everything in my life, and the Lord began to break our hearts for foster care and caring for these kids that are coming from hard places, but whose story could be so different from the trajectory that it was currently on. We've had nine long-term placements. That's placements that were more than a year. And we've had, gosh, it's in the 30s or 40s. I know it was at least 35 placements that have been in our home for anywhere from a few days to a few months. I worried about them coming in and the harm that it could do to my own kids. I worried about the ages of the kids. Kids can experience trauma at very, very young ages, and the younger they experience trauma, the more it affects them. And sometimes you don't know that until much later in their lives. My wife and I speak Spanish, and so we had a placement of some kids that were from a Spanish language home. And when these kids came into our house, we were the very first conversation they'd had in over 4 days since they had been removed from their home, where someone spoke their language. This little girl, and when I remember the social worker coming into the house and saying, "I'm sorry, but for 4 days we have not been able to get her to stop crying, and this is just where we're at." And so she's crying and she's crying, and she came and she sat down in the kitchen, and I never forget her eyes just about popped out of her head, and I said, "¿Por qué estás llorando? Why are you crying?" She just started asking a billion questions. And so explaining to her, I said, "Listen, your mom and dad still love you, but there's some things going on in your family that need to be fixed so that it's safe for you to be with your family." And for the first time in 4 days, she stopped crying and wanted something to eat and wanted to see where she was going to be sleeping. And those girls were with us, oh gosh, almost 18 months. And in the midst of that, I got to see my kids be affected by that. And I would be lying to you if I told you that the brokenness didn't come in with them. It did. It absolutely did. And were my kids affected by it? They were. They also got to deal with the brokenness. And I saw my kids, become more grateful for the things that they have and the family that they have. But I also saw them give of themselves. And I also saw them lovingly and gently wrap their arms around these kids that had come from a hard place. We talk about beautiful brokenness a lot in our house, and I think that my kids became beautifully broken in some ways, and we got to see God grow them in some incredible ways through loving and caring for other people. Well, I would just say that it's worth it. Doing foster care is worth it. And to those that are afraid of what's going to happen to your kids, yes, they're going to be exposed to brokenness with kids that are coming into your house, but they're already being exposed to brokenness. And at least with those that are inside of your house, you get a say in how they get to process that, and how they get to learn from it, and how they get grown through it. If our greatest resource is our children, then it's our responsibility to make sure that they've got the future that we need them to have. Yeah, it's worth it. Don't worry about getting your heart broken. Your heart's going to get broken anyway. So might as well do it loving some kids along the way.